I noticed her before I meant to. Not because she was trying to be noticed, she never was, but because the room seemed to slow down around her. The hum of the cafe softened, the laughter at the corner table faded, and there she was behind the counter, wiping down a cup as if the world didn't need to hurry. She wasn't young, not in the way most people mean it, but she carried something rarer, a quiet sort of gravity that made you forget what you were supposed to be doing. Mid-40s, maybe? Hair tucked loosely behind one ear, a streak of silver she didn't bother to hide. There was calm in her movements, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are, and also from pretending that knowledge doesn't hurt sometimes. I came in that day just to get warm, guitar case slung over my shoulder, fingers half numb from the rain. She glanced up when I entered, eyes steady, assessing, then softening almost imperceptibly. I smiled, said something about the weather. She just nodded, slid a mug toward me. Steam curled between us. "Rough day?" she asked. Her voice wasn't sweet. It was low, a little rough around the edges, like it had been used for real conversations, not practiced ones. "Not rough," I said. "Just long." She nodded again, like she understood more than I'd said. Maybe she did. For a while we stayed in that quiet. The kind that isn't awkward, the kind that lets you hear your own heartbeat if you're paying attention. The cafe clock ticked above the espresso machine. Outside, rain softened the streetlights into blurs. I should have been thinking about my next gig, my rent, anything else. But I wasn't. She walked over with the milk frother still in her hand, paused beside my table. The faint scent of coffee and vanilla drifted with her. She reached across to adjust the napkin holder, but her fingers brushed mine, just enough to register. Warm. Intentional, maybe. Or maybe not. She didn't apologize. She didn't look away either. For a second, either of us said a word. It wasn't attraction in the loud, obvious way. It was something quieter, like recognizing a song you'd forgotten you loved. Her eyes, dark, a little tired but steady, held mine longer than they should have. Then she broke it with a small half-smile that didn't quite reach her mouth. "You're new around here," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "Just moved in a few streets down." "Musician?" I hesitated. "Trying to be." Her smile deepened a fraction. "Then you'll fit right in with the rest of us dreamers." She turned back toward the counter, but something in her posture, the way her shoulders dipped, the way she paused before setting the frother down, made me think she wanted to say more. I didn't know what. Maybe I didn't want to know yet. When she looked back at me, her expression had changed, softer, almost unguarded. "Music's a lonely thing, isn't it?" she said. "Sometimes," I answered. "But so is silence." That made her laugh, quietly. The kind of laugh that feels like it belongs to both people in the room. Then the bell above the door chimed. She straightened, the calm returning, the easy mask slipping back into place. I watched her greet the new customer, her voice suddenly lighter, her touch measured again. But as she passed my table, she let her hand rest, just for a moment, on the edge near mine. Her fingers didn't move, but the warmth lingered, a quiet message I wasn't sure I was meant to hear. By the time I looked up, she was already across the room, pretending nothing had happened. Still, the words she didn't say were louder than any I'd heard all day. And I knew, even then, that I'd be back tomorrow. The next day, I told myself I wasn't going back for her. It was for the coffee, or maybe for the quiet. But the lie didn't hold long. When I walked in, she was already there, rearranging cups on the shelf. She didn't look up at first, but I saw the way her hand hesitated midair, just slightly, like she'd felt me enter before she saw me. "Back so soon?" she said, voice steady, eyes still on the cups. "Guess I forgot how good the coffee was," I said. She gave me that small, knowing smile again, the kind that says, "You don't have to pretend, but I'll let you." I sat at the counter this time. Closer. Close enough to smell the faint trace of her perfume, something soft, warm, and a little nostalgic, like a memory you don't remember making. She poured me a cup, the steam rising between us again. "You play anywhere?" she asked. Mostly open mics, I said. Bars that don't pay much but keep the lights on. She nodded. I used to know someone like that. Her tone shifted, the air thinning around the words. I didn't ask who. I didn't have to. There was a history in the way she said used to. For a while, she busied herself with wiping the counter that didn't need wiping. I watched her fingers, graceful, careful, and wondered who she was when no one was looking. Do you still talk to him? I asked, quieter than I meant to. She paused. Her hand froze over the cloth. No, she said. It's been years. Something in her voice made me wish I hadn't asked. But she didn't seem angry, just distant. He taught me a lot, she added. Mostly about what not to expect from people. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded. She leaned on the counter, closer now, elbows resting on the wood. You're young, she said. Don't start collecting lessons too early. It makes you tired before you're supposed to be. Her face was only a foot away. I could see the faint line near her mouth, the one that deepened when she smiled. I could see how her eyes flickered to my lips, then away. And then, a small, human accident. Her sleeve brushed against my arm as she reached for a glass, and her fingers grazed my wrist. It wasn't deliberate, but neither of us moved. The contact stayed, just a heartbeat too long. I didn't breathe. She did. I felt it, the faint, uneven rhythm of it between us. Then she stepped back. Sorry, she murmured. But her tone betrayed her. It wasn't really an apology. I smiled. For what? She looked at me, then down. For forgetting myself for a second. That silence, right after, said everything we both were too careful to admit. She turned to the espresso machine, pretending to adjust a knob that didn't need adjusting. I watched her reflection in the metal, the way her jaw tightened, the way she avoided looking up. When she finally did, our eyes met again, through that faint reflection, and neither of us looked away. That moment, wordless and fragile, was more intimate than a kiss could have been. Because it wasn't about what we wanted. It was about what we couldn't yet allow ourselves to want. The rain had come back, harder this time. By evening, the cafe was nearly empty. Only 2 people sat by the window, and even they looked ready to leave. She was closing early, she said. Storm warnings? The kind that made the streetlights flicker and the air smell like metal. I offered to help her lock up. She hesitated, then nodded once, as if saying no would take too much effort. The air inside felt different after the last customer left, quieter, more private. The sound of rain against the glass filled the space where our words didn't. I stacked chairs, she wiped the counter. We worked without talking for a while. But the silence wasn't neutral, it hummed. When I carried the last chair over, I brushed past her, barely, and felt her body go still beside mine. Not a flinch. Just stillness. A pause that held too much awareness. You don't have to stay, she said softly. I know, I answered. But I didn't move. Her hands were damp from the cloth. When she reached past me for the light switch, her fingers grazed my wrist again, the same place as before. It was almost cruel how familiar that touch had started to feel. Her voice broke the quiet. People talk in small towns. I don't care. You should, she said, but her tone lacked conviction. Lightning lit up the window for a moment. The reflection showed us, standing too close, both pretending not to notice. You think this is a good idea? She asked, barely above a whisper. I think. I began, then stopped. Because I didn't know how to finish that sentence without ruining it. Her breath came quicker now, not enough to be obvious, but enough for me to feel it when she spoke again. You're young, she said, echoing her earlier words, though this time they didn't sound like a warning. More like a confession. I wanted to tell her she didn't feel old, not to me. That she felt like something steady in a world that wouldn't stop moving. But before I could speak, the bell over the door jingled. We both turned. A man stepped in, older, maybe mid-50s, wearing a soaked jacket. You're still open? He asked. Her hand dropped from mine so fast it might have never been there. "No, sorry," she said, voice smooth, professional again. "Just closing up." He nodded, gave me a curious glance, and left as quickly as he came. The door shut, the bell stilled, and we were alone again. She exhaled. "That's what I meant," she said, almost to herself. I took a step closer. "You shouldn't have to hide." She looked up, finally, directly. Her eyes searched mine, like she wanted to believe me but knew better. "You don't understand," she murmured. "Then help me," I said. She opened her mouth, to answer, maybe to refuse, but didn't. The distance between us had dissolved. Only inches remained. Her hand lifted slightly, almost on instinct, fingertips brushing my jaw before she caught herself. The air tightened. My pulse matched the rhythm of the rain outside. "If we start this," she whispered. "We already did." For one unbearable second, I thought she'd closed the space between us. Her eyes softened, lips parted, then she stepped back, the decision written all over her trembling hands. "We can't," she said, but her voice cracked halfway through. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. Because when she turned away, she lingered, just long enough to make sure I saw what she couldn't say. And somehow, that silence felt more dangerous than any kiss ever could. The storm didn't end that night. It followed me, through the week, through every song I tried to write, through every place I went that wasn't her cafe. By the third day, I gave up pretending I wasn't going back. When I walked in, she didn't look surprised. Just tired, the kind of tired that isn't about sleep. "You shouldn't keep coming here," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Then tell me to stop." She didn't. Instead, she poured a cup without asking and slid it across the counter. Her hands were shaking slightly, barely visible, but enough. We stood there, the silence thick again, until she said, "You don't know what this could cost me." "Then tell me it's not worth it." Her lips pressed together, as if she wanted to say it but couldn't. "I've done this before," she whispered finally. "Not this. But something close enough to know how it ends." I stepped closer, slow enough that she could have walked away. She didn't. "Maybe it doesn't have to end," I said. She gave a small, broken laugh. "You sound like I used to." Her words hurt more than I expected. Still, I reached out, just a small gesture, to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. She froze at the touch, then breathed out softly, like she'd been holding it in too long. "You shouldn't," she said, though her voice had lost all weight. "I know." Her eyes lifted to mine, a collision of want and warning. "You make it hard to be careful. And you make it hard to stop trying," I said. She stepped around the counter, the space between us shrinking until I could feel the warmth of her body, the faint scent of coffee and rain still clinging to her clothes. For a second, either of us moved. Then she reached up, almost hesitantly, and touched my face, tracing her thumb along my cheekbone like she was memorizing it. "Do you have any idea," she whispered, "what people would say?" "Let them," I said. "They don't see this." Her hand stayed there, trembling. "You think this is simple?" "No," I said quietly. "That's why it matters." Something shifted in her, a flicker of surrender or exhaustion, or both. Her forehead leaned against mine, eyes closed, breaths mingling in the inch of air between us. Every sound outside vanished, even the rain seemed to pause. I could feel her heartbeat, too fast for the calm she wore. My hands hovered at her waist, unsure whether to touch or not. "Say something," I murmured. She opened her eyes, close enough that I could see the tiny reflections of light in them. "If I say it," she said, "there's no going back." "Then don't say it," I whispered. "Just stay." Her lips parted, her breath warm against my mouth, and then, the back door creaked open. We froze. A young barista, one I hadn't seen before, stepped in, umbrella dripping. "Oh, sorry, I didn't know anyone was still here." Her hand dropped instantly. The mask came back on. "It's fine," she said, voice perfectly steady. "We were just locking up." The girl nodded, left through the front, and the doorbell chimed again. Silence returned, but it wasn't the same. We stood there, still too close, both knowing that whatever was about to happen, almost just did. She looked at me, a mix of apology and longing, and said, barely audible, "Next time, I might not stop." The next morning, I found out what she hadn't told me. It wasn't scandal or betrayal, nothing that obvious. It was quieter, heavier. Something she'd carried alone. I walked into the cafe, ready to apologize for nothing in particular, just to see her face again. But she wasn't behind the counter. Instead, a younger girl, the same one who'd walked in on us, handed me a coffee with a polite, curious smile. "She's not here today," she said. "Family thing." I nodded, pretending I didn't care, pretending my chest didn't sink the way it did. But when I turned to leave, I noticed her handwriting on a note stuck to the espresso machine, a reminder list. In the corner, half scribbled, I caught something: "Call Mark, finalize divorce papers." The letters blurred for a second. Divorce. So that was the shadow in her voice. The thing she never said. And suddenly, all those quiet moments, the hesitations, the guarded glances, made painful sense. She wasn't afraid of what others might think. She was afraid of what she might become again. When I saw her later that evening, she was locking up, same as always. "You weren't here this morning," I said. She froze at my voice but didn't turn around. "I had something to take care of." "Mark?" The keys stilled in her hand. Slowly, she faced me. "You shouldn't know that." "I didn't mean to, doesn't matter," she interrupted. "You know now." I stepped closer. "You could have told me." Her laugh was low and bitter. "And say what? That I'm cleaning up the mess of a 20-year mistake? That I can barely look at another man without hearing the echoes of the one I'm still legally tied to?" I said nothing. The words hung between us like fog. Then her voice softened. "You think this is just about age, don't you? About what people would say?" I swallowed. "Isn't it?" She shook her head. "It's about me. I don't trust myself to want something again. Especially not someone who still believes love can fix things." I took another step, not enough to touch, but close enough for her breath to find mine. "Then let me believe for both of us." Her eyes glistened, not tears, not yet. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Then explain it to me." She moved past me to the counter, her hand brushing my arm as she went. The contact was fleeting but electric, like lightning behind the ribs. When she turned back, her composure was gone. "He came by today," she said quietly. "Mark. Wanted to talk. He said he still loves me." The words hit harder than I expected. I nodded once. "And you?" Her lips trembled. "I don't know. Maybe I just miss being loved by someone who knew me before I stopped trying." Silence. A storm without thunder. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her back from whatever edge she was standing on. Instead, she took a slow step toward me. "This isn't fair to you," she said. "Maybe not," I said. "But neither is pretending it doesn't mean something." She looked up, eyes searching, torn between retreat and surrender. Then she did something small but final. She took my hand. Just that. No words, no promise. Her fingers trembled in mine, but she didn't let go. "We shouldn't," she whispered. "I know," I said. "But you're still here." And she was. The cafe was closed, lights dimmed, the street outside washed in pale moonlight. I hadn't planned to come, not tonight, not after what she told me. But I found myself there anyway, hands in pockets, rain still clinging to my jacket. Through the glass, I saw her moving, slow, deliberate, wiping down tables that didn't need it. It wasn't work. It was escape. She looked up and saw me. Didn't smile. Didn't look away either. Just unlocked the door. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "You've said that before," I replied, stepping inside. She sighed, leaned back against the counter. The air between us hummed, filled with everything we hadn't said yet. I talked to him again, she said quietly. It's done. The papers are signed. I nodded. So it's over. She shook her head. No. It never ends that cleanly. We stood there, both knowing this was the moment we'd been circling around since the first cup of coffee, the first brush of skin. Her eyes traced my face, lingering like she was memorizing something she wasn't supposed to keep. Why do you keep coming back? She asked. Because when I'm not here, everything else feels empty. She swallowed. Her hand gripped the edge of the counter. You make it sound simple. It is, I said. You just don't want it to be. That broke something in her, not loudly, but enough for her voice to shake when she spoke. You think I don't want this? You think I don't wake up wondering what it would feel like to stop pretending? Her words hung there, raw, unguarded. I took a step closer. Then another. Until I was standing right in front of her. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. I think, I said, you're scared of something that's already happening. Her laugh was short, breathless. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe not. But I know what this is. She looked up, eyes searching, wet with unshed tears. And what's that? Something we'll regret if we don't let it happen. That was it, the last line between reason and surrender. When I reached for her hand, she didn't pull away this time. Her fingers threaded through mine like they'd been waiting to. She exhaled, a soft, trembling sound, and leaned forward until her forehead touched mine. I've spent years trying not to need anyone, she whispered. I'm not asking you to need me, I said. Just don't keep pretending you don't want to. Her breath brushed against my lips, warm, hesitant, inevitable. The silence deepened until it was unbearable. Her hand came up, tracing the line of my jaw, down to my collar. Every nerve in my body burned for her. And then, she stopped. Eyes closed. If I cross this line, she whispered, I won't know how to come back. Then don't, I said. She opened her eyes, and for the first time, she didn't look afraid. The distance between us disappeared, not with words, but with the quiet understanding that nothing could go back to how it was before. Morning came softly, pale light spilling through the cafe windows, touching the empty tables, the half-washed cups, the two of us sitting in the quiet aftermath of everything we hadn't planned. She sat across from me, one hand curled around the mug gone cold, the other resting near mine on the counter. Our fingers weren't touching, but they didn't need to. The air between them held enough history for both of us. Neither of us spoke at first. Words would have cheapened what was already clear, the kind of clarity that doesn't come with a speech, just silence that feels understood. Finally, she said, I didn't think I'd ever let anyone close again. I smiled a little. You didn't. I just kept showing up until you forgot to keep the door locked. That earned a quiet laugh, the first genuine one I'd heard from her. It filled the space like sunlight. She looked at me for a long moment, eyes soft but steady. People will talk, you know. They always do. Let them, I said. They weren't here for any of it. Her expression changed then. Not a smile, not tears, just something open. Something that said she'd stopped running from her own heart. She reached across the counter, slow, deliberate, and placed her hand over mine. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of every hesitation we'd burned through to get here. Her thumb brushed against my knuckles, small, rhythmic, grounding. It still scares me, she admitted. Good, I said. That means it's real. Outside, the city was waking, the faint rumble of buses, the whisper of passing rain. But inside, time stayed still. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, mixed with something warmer, quieter, the kind of peace that only comes after the storm finally decides to leave you alone. She stood, walked around the counter, and sat beside me. Not across. Beside. Our shoulders touched, tentative at first, then natural. Do you think it'll last? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I thought for a moment. I don't know. But it's here now. That seemed to be enough. She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder, exhaling as if she'd been holding that breath for years. My arm found its way around her, not to claim, not to protect, just to be there. In that small, quiet space, the age gap, the fear, the noise, all of it faded into something human, imperfect, and true. Her voice came again, soft against my shirt. You make it too easy to forget how careful I was trying to be. I smiled. Then don't remember yet. She tilted her face toward me, and I pressed a slow kiss to her forehead, nothing rushed, nothing uncertain. Just a promise written in stillness. The world outside went on. But for us, that moment lingered, ordinary, fragile, and exactly enough.